Hi there, it's Laura here from iHeart Planners, and today we're going to talk about how to achieve those long-term goals and cultivate long-term habits. So this is the third part of our series, and we've already talked about how to get started with goals and habits, but I want to talk about how to keep the momentum going week after week, month after month, and even year after year. And I want to tell you that here I am coming from a place of having struggled so much with this and eventually finding out how to create those habits that stick. And I know if you're still struggling with this, it is so frustrating. So I'm super excited to help you with this, and be sure to go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you don't want to miss the rest of the series. So the first principle to remember is that if everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. That is a quote that I am sure you may have heard before, but it bears repeating, and it really helps with the long-term achievement of your goals and habits, because what ends up happening is we prioritize too many things, and that's the root of why we end up throwing in the towel. Because if everything is important, it's hard to know what's important, and there's a temptation when we get some momentum going to keep piling on more and more instead of just keeping that momentum going. So be sure you're clear on what your priorities are and which of your goals are the things that are most important to you right now. The next thing to remember is that less is more. And again, just like the first one, you probably have heard this before, but again, it bears repeating that less is more. So when you set yourself up with 20 different complicated things you want to do every day or every week, that's unrealistic to keep up with for the long term. Maybe you can do it for a week or two, or maybe a month or two, but long term, that's not really practical. So focus on those things that you really want to achieve, that are really important to you, and do those. Next, this is super key, give yourself time. It's not a race. So when you are establishing those daily or weekly habits, don't be tempted to add on too many too quickly. Go really slowly. It takes time to develop habits, and we've all heard probably the 21 days to create a habit, but new research is actually suggesting that the average is more like 66 days. So it's okay. Take the time you need for the first habit or two to really become ingrained before you add something else on. And this alone will make a dramatic difference in being able to stick with it long term. Next, focus on your strengths, not just your weaknesses. So this is a good thing to think about anywhere along the goal setting process. But a lot of times we all have weaknesses that we want to improve, and that is wonderful. I highly recommend that, and I do that. I focus on some of the things I'm weaker in and try to get better at them. But don't ignore developing your strengths as well. Because if all your habits and all your goals are centered around improving things that you don't naturally excel at, it's going to be really discouraging, and it's always going to feel like you're fighting an uphill battle, and your progress is always going to be slower if you're working on your weaknesses. So along with working on some weaknesses, also develop some strengths. This will give you incredible momentum. So for example, if you love running, I don't, but let's say you do, I know I hear some people actually do, then make it a goal to improve in that, do better in that. Or similarly, maybe you hate exercise. So if you have a goal to exercise more, try to pick something that you enjoy, that you do better. Maybe you're a terrible long distance runner, but you're great at sprinting or something like that. Set a goal like that, and then make sure you have a goal along with it in an area that you're better at. Say you are an excellent photographer and you love that. Set a goal to develop those skills and improve in those skills. Just make sure that some of your goals and habits center around your strengths. Next, re-examine your goals frequently. This will allow you, when you sit down and do this, to thoughtfully and intentionally remove some goals that you realize aren't as important to you anymore, instead of just falling off the wagon. Because if instead of re-examining things and giving yourself permission to say, I thought this was a priority, but it's not, or things have changed, and things do change, and I don't want to work on this anymore, or this isn't as high a priority anymore, if you just let yourself completely abandon the goal and fall off the wagon, you're going to be carrying around a lot of extra guilt and feelings of failure that aren't really necessary. So earlier in this series, I showed you my goal setting and really heart check process, and I do that every 3 or 4 months. So I would encourage you to do that and give yourself regular intervals to re-examine. Next, give yourself grace, especially when you're in seasons of survival mode. Anytime it's important to give ourselves grace, but especially we need to recognize what's going on around us and know that when we're in a season when life is hectic, like we've just had a baby or we're moving halfway across the country or something like that, we're gonna have to adjust our expectations. And in the next part of this series, we're gonna go in depth on how to keep up with your habits when you're in survival mode. Now, if there was just one thing I could tell you about keeping up with your goals and habits long term, it would be this, and that is keep on going when you mess up. This may seem obvious, but I had such a hard time doing this, and you may be the same. So when you mess up, it's not the mess up, it's not the mistake that counts, because we all mess up. We all have bad days, we all make mistakes. It's what we do next that separates those who stick with their habits from those who can't stick with it. And so this is what makes all the difference. When you mess up, keep on going. And let me tell you a little story about how this worked in my life and how this really changed everything for me. So a few years ago, I set myself a goal for 1 month to get all the dishes washed and go to bed with a clean sink every night. I was not doing that, and I was waking up to a messy kitchen. It wasn't going well. So of course I set this goal. I made this pretty printable like I do. I laminated it. I hung it up in front of my sink so I could see it and it would remind me. And I even shared it with all my readers on the blog and invited them to join me. And of course, day 1 comes. I'm all excited. I wash all the dishes before I go to bed. I take a dry erase marker and I draw a little smiley face in the first box. And then the second day comes. Let me tell you, I was exhausted. I had a child who wasn't sleeping well. We had company. We were out late that night. So as soon as I got my daughter to sleep that night, I didn't even think about it and I just crashed in bed. And when I woke up the next morning, I realized I had failed. I had not just failed, but I failed on day 2. I mean, who does that? Like day 22 maybe, but day 2. And like, seriously, I felt like such a failure. And my first instinct was to do what I'd always done. I wanted to go rip that silly printable off the wall, throw it in the trash, and pretend like it never happened and I never made the goal. But then it dawned on me. I mean, not only were a bunch of readers counting on me, but there were still 29 days left in the month. I could do it for 29 more days. Wouldn't doing it 30 out of 31 days be better than like giving up on day 2 and throwing in the towel? So I kept going, and guess what? I did it all the rest of the 29 days and then the entire next month. And to this day, that was probably almost 4 years ago, but to this day, I definitely have that habit more deeply ingrained, and most nights I do get my kitchen cleaned before I go to bed, and it was because I worked so hard on that and I didn't give up and I didn't throw in the towel. And I know that seems like a silly example, like it's not direly important when you wash your dishes, but whatever it is in life, it's that keeping on going when you mess up that is gonna make all the difference. So I hope this helps you stick with your goals and habits long term, and next time in this series, we are going to be talking about how to stick with our goals when we're in seasons of survival mode. So if you don't want to miss anything, be sure to hit the subscribe button.